Hello, good morning everyone. Welcome to my audio class. This is Prasan Banerjee of Kobi Joydev Mahavidyalaya. In today's class, I am going to discuss Act 1, Scene 3 of Shakespeare's Macbeth. And this class is specially designed for the undergraduate students of BA second semester of the Bardwan University. So, you have already had my earlier uploads in which I have discussed the previous two scenes, and you have come to know from this particular two scenes that Act 1 Scene 2 of Shakespeare's Macbeth has served as a real expository scene for the play. So this particular scene, which immediately follows the Act 1 Scene 2 scene, goes on with this expository function and also takes you deep into the drama, into the main conflicts of the drama. This particular scene is divided into two definite parts. The first part would give you an idea of the witches whom we have already met in Act 1 Scene 2, and the second part will describe the witches' first interaction with Macbeth and Banquo. That means Macbeth and Banquo will meet the witches for the first time, say in the play. So this particular scene is significant in various ways actually. First, it will give you an idea about Shakespeare's conception of the witches. There were a lot of arguments relating to whether the witches are really the sisters of fate or whether they are any divine creatures. This particular scene, I believe would clarify those doubts, that Shakespeare hasn't really treated those witches as divine creatures or as the sisters of fate who had kind of control over the future of any particular human being. But the witches are mere infernal creatures from the from the lower elements of nature, is evident in their behavioral pattern that is kind of exposed in this particular scene. In the first part of the scene, the witches are shown as revengeful, as quarrelsome, as taking on people almost without any reason, and this clarifies that the witches do not have any exalted role as it is found in say in the classical dramas, like the role of fate, and they are not really representing fate. They are rather kind of representing the abnormalities of nature, something which with which the Elizabethan people were kind of accustomed to, where they were accustomed to. In Elizabethan time, there are a lot of publications relating to the behaviors and representation of witches, because witch hunting and witchcraft was a known thing in the time when Macbeth was being written, and it is found from historical records that in 1603 and 1604 a lot of women were burned down on the charge of witchcraft. So Shakespeare somewhat had this kind of probably had that inclination to use those topical references while writing this particular play in order to kind of please the audience, in order to kind of cater to their superstitious beliefs. So Macbeth's it is quite found that Macbeth's treatment of the witches is probably has borrowed from many of those local publications, and Shakespeare took as material for his purposes the ideas about witchcraft that he found existing in people around him and in books, particularly like Reginald Scott's Discovery, which was published in 1584, and James I's On Demonology. These particular two books are identified as Shakespeare's source book for the witches. That means from which Shakespeare has taken this entire witchcraft or entire behavioral pattern of the witches. And so Act 1 Scene 3 will clarify this particular question, that the witches are not really representations of divinity, neither they are sisters of fate who could control Macbeth's future. Some people have interpreted the witches to be to be fears and the anxieties of within Macbeth's own mind, probably representing his ambition as well. which needed a kind of fruitful atmosphere to express itself, and which is providing that that fruitful atmosphere in a way. So without further argument, let us proceed with the scene. Scene 2, the setting is a heath near forest. I have told you about already the witch's preference for heath, because at the contemporary time, it is from local records is found that the heath during at that particular time was the place of many unsocial and many illegal activities. So heath is particularly a place which were at that time believed to be thronged by supernatural creatures. So whenever the witches come to meet the people, it was basically upon a heath, and the time was night or evening when darkness is preceding. It was not really complete darkness, but shadowy darkness. As you know that shadowy darkness is more mysterious than complete darkness, because in complete darkness you cannot see anything, whereas shadowy darkness, where you see things but you cannot make out what these actual things that you are seeing. So it creates a lot of mystery. That's why shadowy darkness is preferred as in Macbeth rather than complete darkness, and witches meet or they are presented on the stage at the time of kind of in the time zone of shadowy darkness, where there is a kind of shade of light and darkness, both are operating at the same time. So Athan heath near forest. Forest is a particular place nearing the capital of Scotland at that time, and it's a heath. Thunder entered the three witches. Where hast thou been, sister? Second witch, killing swine. Sister, where thou? So the first three lines kind of shows that the witches are asking the other witches about their whereabouts, and one answer comes, killing swine. Now I stop here to explain this thing. In 1603 there was a famine that happened in England, in which a lot of pigs got killed, and it was one of the common beliefs that the witches are behind this particular pig famine, and they were probably responsible for the killing of the pigs. So Shakespeare has just used, like a brilliant master, like he has used this particular reference in order to kind of attract the audience, possibly to give in to play to their superstition. Killing swine, that they had already that idea in their head that witches are responsible for killing of pigs. So when the first sister which is asking was where hast thou been, sister, the second witch is saying killing swine. So here Shakespeare is using the topical reference. Third witch, sister, where thou. The first witch says, a sailor's wife had chestnut in her lap and munched and give me kuthai. A sailor's wife, a wife of a captain of a ship. At that time, captaining a ship was not considered to be that big or prestigious a profession. It was from the lowly stratum of the society. People from the lowly stratum of the society used to take up those jobs. So the sailor and the sailor wives represented the lower stratum of the society. The witches went to the sailor wife to ask for some nuts that she was munching, but she ultimately refused that. Her husband's to Aleppo gone, anoint the witch, the rampant Ronian cries. The lady who was referred to say rather derogatorily as rampant Ronian, as one who had a fat bottom, refused to grant the wish of the witch. And now the witch and her husband to Aleppo gone. Aleppo is a particular place, and master of the tiger. The tiger was the name of the ship which her husband is steering. But in a sieve I will dye the sail, and like a rat without a tail I will do. Since the wife has refused to give her grant her wish, she would take revenge on the husband, and it was the behavior of the witches to say everything 3 times, because 3 was a mystic number, I have already explained. So whatever they will do, they will make use of this continuous number reference. Here again Shakespeare is borrowing from the material from those books that I have already referred to, where these numbers are continuously being referred to. 3, 9, these are numbers which are very mystic, evil numbers preferred by the witches. So what the witches is saying, that they will take revenge on the husband. This shows the revengeful, the infernal attitude of the witches, that when they cannot get their simple wish granted by the wife, that means just because she has refused to give them nuts, they are prepared to take on her husband. So this shows the lowly nature of the witches, and this immediately clarifies the doubt that the witches are not at all the sisters of fate. Second witch, I will give thee a wind. First witch, thou art kind. Third witch, and I another. So I will give thee a wind, meaning I will support you with a wind. I told you that the witches have some controls over nature, some natural element. They can control the weather, but they cannot control the future. First witch, I myself have all the other and the very parts they blew, and all the quarters that they know. I will in the shipment card, I will drain him dry as hay. I will suck his blood out, so he becomes as dry as hay. That is what she is trying to say. Sleep shall neither day nor night hang upon his penthouse lid. I will make him such that he will completely forget sleep. Penthouse lid is referring to the eyelids, as eye is a sloping, eye slopes down from the temple, from the forehead. Simply as like a penthouse slopes from the main building, the annex part of a building. So here eye is compared to as a penthouse lid. He shall live like a man forbid, weary 7 nights, 9 times 9. So I'm not going into the details of this. That suggests that the witches are very revengeful, and they can kind of start taking revenge on someone at a very negligible excuse, and their behavior is as infernal as anything. So this particular portion of the scene clarifies that the witches are not divine creatures, and they are not really sisters of fate. In the next part of the scene, I will be describing the witches' encounter with Macbeth.